Hello, happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to another Forever Friends Academy Sunday relationship scenario live chat with Sharla Kornegay. Happy to be in another episode with you guys. As always, I'm hoping that you've had a great week and you are getting nice, rested, winding down, I guess, to start the next week, upcoming week. So as per usual, let me introduce myself to anyone who might be new to the show. My name is Sharla Kornegay. I am an author, a recording artist, founder of Interask Coaching and Forever Friends Academy. This is my show, Forever Friends. So if you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. I am on every Thursday and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I talk about all relationship topics. And tonight is a kind of like the interesting night, at least that's how I like to think of it, where I present a relationship scenario and I get to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on it. The structure of the show is my version of a Q&A, which is the Q stands for me putting out a quote at the top of the episode, a question, and then hopefully the goal is that the question will be answered by the time you get off of, the podcast with me. So that is the structure of the show, and tonight is Sunday relationship scenario. So I do have a scenario to provide for you guys. So I'm going to wait it out a little bit, and while I'm waiting, if you are interested at all in checking out my music, when I am on the stage, I go by Sharla K, and I sing basically R&B, pop, inspirational music. I don't like to put myself in a box. I like to at least leave myself open enough to hear any genre of music and hopefully be able to add some creativity to it and write. But most of the things that I put out so far has been R&B, pop, inspirational music, some gospel music as well. And if you want to check any of that out, any of my music catalog out, just Google Sharla K. The songs are on all platforms, so check it out. And hopefully you'll find some songs that resonate with you, some songs that hopefully will, go on your Spotify playlist, your Apple Music, iTunes playlist, etc. And and look forward to putting out more new music this year that you guys can check out and kind of bop to. So, all right, so I'm going to wait and see if I get some of you guys on with me tonight because I want to pop out the question, the quote and the question, and I want to get into the scenario. So while I'm waiting, what I'll do is maybe do a little bit of a recap of some of the things that we've been talking about. And for those of you who also might be new, as a coach, I have pretty much two simple approaches to relationship coaching, which is one, I firmly believe that there are fundamental principles, fundamental truths that we can use to build and develop our relationships. I am all about building lasting relationships that last a lifetime. Unfortunately, in the age that we live in right now, there seems to be attack on marriages. It seems to be a divide that's going on between men and women. And I really prayerfully, I'm hoping that these conversations that we have in this podcast can kind of counteract some of that and instill, hope in people who might have lost hope in love and in the process of relationships. So that is my goal. So one is always to provide you with some fundamental principles and truths that are based on godly principles that you can definitely apply when it comes to your intimate relationships. But what I love about fundamental truths is that you can apply them all throughout all the other areas of your life because they're universal. So that's why I like to put them out there in that way. And I also like to say that I help people weed out their lazy loving. A lot of the problems that we can kind of find when relationships get stagnant or stale, or even if you're thinking about yourself and not feeling motivated or inspired to pursue your dreams or goals that you have, it's usually because we become lazy lovers to ourselves. And a lazy lover is just someone who doesn't love to their fullest capacity. So because they don't do that, they can't discover, and they don't dive into delighting and exploring all of who they are. So it's very hard to extend to someone else. So those are my two approaches that you'll find when you come to my podcast, or if you want to get any deeper coaching, maybe one-on-one. I do have one-on-one coaching clients, and I also have a group coaching subscription membership through my Forever Friends Academy. So feel free, anybody on YouTube, you like anything that you hear, like, comment, and subscribe. You'll know whenever I am on live. And if you want to dive in a little bit deeper, then you can always click the description. If you're on YouTube and Facebook, click the link in my bio. If you're on Instagram, to be able to, peruse my Forever Friends Academy website. So, hey, Emily, thank you for popping in, love. How are you? I was just doing the normative introduction of myself as well as what this show is about. And tonight is Sunday night relationship scenario. So I was just waiting to see if I get some more of you guys on with me. But since I have you, I will pop out the quote for today. And you guys can tell me if you agree with it. I kind of wanted to talk about, there's a phrase that has been going around when we're talking about relationships, especially in like any kind of love industry, relationship experts. And you guys can let me know if you've ever heard of the phrase equal partnership in relationships. And right now, it seems to be, when I hear and I listen to other, whether it's relationship experts or people who have podcasts like me, who like to talk about relationships, it seems to be there's a definitive line that's being drawn between traditional relationships or equal partnership relationships. And that's kind of how they've been talking about it. And just for some context and background, a lot of people who, I guess they're saying, you have to kind of draw the line. Either you want a traditional relationship or you want a equal partnership. And the traditional relationship is kind of like where the man is the breadwinner and the wife is a very traditional wife. She stays home, most likely a stay-at-home mom with the baby, and is basically in charge of the domestic economy of the household. And the equal partnership, in the way that it's presented, is, I guess, where somebody says, I've found my match, or someone who I feel like is equal to me. And it seems like when most of the people talk about it, it's like they're both holding their weight in the relationship equally. So that's just some context on that. What I would like to introduce is to kind of talk about it and introduce another concept as well, as far as the structure, the dynamics, or the structure, the way you can have structure your relationship. So first of all, the quote it goes like this, and you guys let me know if you, one, think it's a truthful quote, and two, do you think it's, good in applying towards your relationship? Can it be applicable, something that you can apply to your relationship, basically? All right, so the quote goes like this. You can have two things or two people that are equally necessary but not equally valuable. So I'll say it again. The quote is, you can have two people or two things that are equally necessary but are not equally valuable. So that's the quote folks, tonight, that is the quote for tonight. So I'll say it one more time. One more time for you guys to ponder on it. All right, so the quote goes like this. You can have two things or two people that are equally necessary, but not equally valuable. Do you think, first of all, do you think it's the truth? And along with it being the truth, I guess that can also be turned into a question, right? Can you have two things or two people that are equally necessary, but not equally valuable? So I'm curious to see what you guys think and what your thoughts are on that. All right. And while you guys are thinking about that, I will also pose the question tonight, and hopefully I've done a good job kind of wrapping the question in with the scenario that I wanted to present for you guys tonight. And so the question is basically, if someone gave you, because many of us, and a lot of people that I talk to, especially in the current state of dating environment, or dating in current day modern society, many people have expressed that it's a challenging, and it's hard. So a lot of us, a lot of people feel that it would be great if you can just kind of, pick your partner or build them and you'd have the perfect match and things like that. So today, let's just imagine that you get your wish, okay? And someone asks you this question and they give you the opportunity of whether you can have a relationship that's an equal partnership, right? Or you can have a relationship that has an interdependent system of fairness. All right, let me say it again. Because I know I'm like, Sharla, why do you come up with all of these? The wording, So let me say it again. If someone came to you and, they're basically allowing you to build and construct, let's say, the most ideal relationship, right? Because nothing's perfect, but the most ideal relationship for you. And they first start off with this question and they say you can have the opportunity to have an equal partnership relationship, or you can have a relationship that has an interdependent system of fairness. So think about it. And I would love for you to think about it and kind of think about it in this way. What is the difference between something being equal versus something being fair? And if you have, for those of you who have come to the podcast before in the show, I'm sure by now, have learned that I like to ask questions that make you reflect, that make you think in depth about certain relationship topics and issues and concepts. And I also love to look at the details, pay attention to the details, and look at the nuances especially between words and how we use those words, and try to kind of like identify the difference in it. Because sometimes when we use these words and when we say certain statements, they just become so blurred because we don't pay attention to the details oftentimes, and we just kind of put them together, right? We just kind of put them in the same group, and they're not necessarily. So when you're thinking about it, I would love for you to think about it in that way. But while I'm waiting for you guys, as per usual, to write, and I know sometimes it takes a while to type. And of course, if you're listening to the replay, feel free to flood my feed and also answer the question and give me your feedback and your thoughts on the things that I've presented so far. But I'll chime in on it and let you know what my thoughts are. And then, of course, whenever your feedback and your statements come in, I'll read it. So for the first quote, I do agree with that quote. I do think that you can have two things that are equally necessary, but not equally valuable. And I'll tie it into the second question that I presented to you about the equal partnership versus an interdependent system of fairness. And I think that those two things kind of tie in together because I have said before on the show and on my podcast, and I say it all the time when I'm coaching my clients that, in a relationship, the beauty of having a relationship is that you have two people who complement each other. And when you complement someone, when something is complementary, right, to you, it means that it's not exactly the same, right? That there are certain skills and there are certain things that you will have that I don't have, right? Maybe my weaknesses are your strengths. And that's how we come together and we grow. So I always say in when I coach my clients that in a relationship, you want an interdependent system of fairness instead of necessarily going into it looking at it from an equal partnership. Because I found, and most definitely, if you talk to any couple that have been in a relationship for a long time, they will tell you that there are many different phases in the relationship where it's not 50-50. It's not where every step of the way in each stage of the relationship that each person is giving a certain amount of percentage in the relationship that is always equal. It's just not, But if it's not equal, it should always be fair, though. It should always be fair, right? Hey, Diamond, how are you, love? Thank you for popping in. I've already put out a quote and a question. So let me just state it real quick for you. I don't know how long you're going to be in here, but let me just at least say it to you just in case you want to answer them. The quote at the top of the podcast was, can you have two things or two people that are equally necessary, but not equally valuable, right? And the question I pose is if someone came to you and they basically were helping you to construct your most ideal relationship, would you want to have an equal partnership or would you want to have an interdependent system of fairness? So I'm sorry, that was definitely a mouthful, but I just wanted to present it to you just in case you wanted to answer any of those. So I agree with the quote. I think you can definitely apply it in your relationship because I think when there are moments in a relationship where it just kind of naturally happens, where one person might be given 80%, because of the season that they're in. It might just be because that person has certain skill sets or has a certain characteristics or personality that can, right, take the forefront and be able to navigate that season of the relationship maybe more strongly than the other, right? It's not that both of them are lazy or anything like that. It just is dependent on what is going on. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's just take a simple example of a couple having a baby, right? A couple having a baby, right? We know it takes a heterosexual relationship to do that. Even if you're in another type of dynamic, you're going to need the sperm from a man and, the egg from the woman. But let's just say it's a heterosexual relationship, right? And the man is going to, right, do his bidding and be able to be intimate with that woman. And then she, right, gets pregnant and her life, right, is altered in a totally different way from that man. She has to allow that baby, right, if they're both married and they wanted to have this child, that baby has to develop inside of her body, hopefully, prayerfully for the full term, 9 months. Her heart literally shifts. Other organs in her body make room for this baby to develop, right? She can't eat certain foods. She can't do certain things just to make sure that her health is on par, as well as not doing things for the baby to be harmed. And then, right, when it's time to give birth to the baby, she is most definitely, right, the quarterback of that situation, of having to listen to her body, having to be able to withstand whatever, if there is pain that comes, because I've heard that some people don't. I wish I would have gotten that. Some women don't even experience pain when they have contractions. I don't know. I haven't spoken to one in real life, but I've read articles on it. I wish I would have gotten that. But anyway, nonetheless, right, giving birth, her husband is most definitely a supporting aid, but it's her, right, having to stay in tune with her body, having to go through whatever contractions and things like that to be able to give birth to that baby. And it is her that in that moment is sacrificing her life to bring that child into the world, right? So there is no equal playing field on that, right? We can say maybe that's a situation where it's 80% pretty much as far as the whole transformation, that it's going to happen more so to the woman than the man. So that's just a simple example of where that occurs. And let's maybe take another example in the, let's say, the courting or the dating phase. Normatively, right? Of course, there's outliers in any situation, but normatively, usually it is the men who pursue, right? The women, they are expected a lot heavily to date the woman, to court her. You know, a lot of times when you're going on the date, most of them are expected to pay. If he then feels like he would like to elevate the relationship and marry her, a lot of customs are that that man is going to come to the family and ask, right, for her hand in marriage and things like that. And, right, so all throughout that process, we can say that he's probably putting in, right, the 80% when it comes to just talking about the process of courting and things like that. So there are many different examples that we can use where it's not equal, right, in the way of, I guess, how the relationship is functioning. But at all stages, it should be fair, right? And when we talk about fair, something being fair, that's different from equal. When something's fair, it means that it's just. It means that there is no discriminatory disadvantages that are put in play to prohibit that person from actually, right, being in the position that they're supposed to be in and being able to do and serve from the position that they're in at 100%, right? So that's a great example or a great environment for a relationship to have, because it means that those two people in the relationship are not going to do things to each other or do things in the relationship that's going to prohibit both of them to not be able to serve at 100% of their capacity in whatever season that they're in, right? So you might be like, well, Charlie, you just said 80 and the other person's giving 80 and the other person's doing 20%. That 20%, they still need to go at 100% capacity, right? So for example, I have clients that sometimes, as we're working on, the area of relationship, of course, we kind of go into the rest of their life, because it's very hard not to dive into the other areas, because our relationships are so tied into everything that we do, because we first have to start with our relationship with ourselves and God, and our relationship with ourselves before we show up in any other position that God has put us in. So oftentimes I'll start with their health, right? And we'll start to do things that pour back into them and create discipline and things like that. So let's, for example, just take a client that maybe I've had that they're not used to working out, right? They're not used to working out, but that's something that we set, because this body is the vehicle that we have that we navigate through this life with. And if we don't keep this vehicle healthy, then, well, everything else kind of, right, falters or fails, because your health is your greatest wealth here. So let's just say, because I know that this client is not used to exercise, I'm not going to have her do a whole hour of exercise, with 25-pound weights. I'm going to help him or her build slowly, right, their stamina and their discipline and their endurance. And I'll say, okay, 15. We're going to start with 15 minutes. Let's just work out 15 minutes, maybe 3 days a week. But for that 15 minutes, I want you to give me 100%. Right? I want you to give me your all, whatever that is. And maybe that 100% is them huffing and puffing every second and stopping and getting water because they're just not used to it, but they're still giving their 100%, right? So in that same example, when there is a season, a relationship where one person is giving 80 because just of the situation and the circumstance, and because the way that they're built, they can handle a lot of the weight of what's going on right now. Not that it will always be like that, but they can. So they do. That 20% that the person is offering, right? They're doing their 20%, but they're doing that 20% while still giving their all, while still giving 100% to whatever that 20% of service that they have to give. So hopefully that clarifies it for you guys. And I know some, even in my mind, because sometimes when I introduce some of the concepts and when I start to try to dive into looking at the nuances between words that are oftentimes very used interchangeably, sometimes it might take a little while to kind of like look at it from those perspectives or viewpoints. So those are some of the examples of where you can kind of find why sometimes in relationships you'll have seasons where, right, it's not necessarily going to be an equal partnership. Doesn't mean that those people don't love each other. Doesn't mean that it does not mean that the 20% that is given is not valued, right? Is not valued, even in the situation of like, of course, the woman giving birth, right? She can't even hold the child or the child be developed until, right, that seed has been sown by the man. However, in the process, a lot of the process of how a child develops, right, is going to be experienced in her body, not his, right? And his support is great, but she is most definitely taking on a lot of, right, that responsibility just because of the way she is naturally built. So I kind of want you to think about it in that way. And I also use another example that I think, I know it's very helpful for me. I use it with my clients just to kind of help them understand what I mean when I say a relationship. Instead of thinking of it as an equal partnership, think of it as an interdependent system of fairness, right? It's literally you just look in your body, right? The bodies that we exist in is an interdependent system, right? The heart is beating. We got our kidneys, we got all these muscular system, nervous system, circulatory system. We have all these organs that are positioned and do their job, right? Do their job, thankfully, to keep us well and alive and being able to do the things that we have to do. But the heart never gets any rest, though. The heart has to continue beating, prayerfully, all the way up until, right, you've done all that you needed to do here. It doesn't get a rest, and oftentimes I'll say to my clients, especially if they have, when they're in the midst of an argument and they're saying, they're complaining about their partner, saying their partner is not doing, this or that or enough or et cetera, right? And I'll say, well, imagine if your heart, said like, man, I just got to keep beating all the time, like the kidney better pull its weight, or the tonsils or whatever other areas in our body that clearly, right, is not doing what it does. But it doesn't do that, right? It does what it knows it is designed and purposed to do, because it knows that it has to continue doing that to be able for us to, right, live life healthily. And I think it's a great way to kind of look at the structure of our relationships, because, yeah, the heart is there and it's beating all the time, but the heart without the brain, right, it's not going to be great for our body. And each part, right, of our body, the internal mechanism is equally valuable, but none of it is valuable detached from the fact that it is the purpose of the whole, right? The whole dynamics of the way our body works is that it is there to help to support our life, to be able to, right, sustain the life of an individual. It's that one purpose and harmony in that one vision. And I think in that same way, that's how we look at our relationships, right? Is that there is this interdependent system between a husband and a wife, between a man and a woman, that, we're not doing the same things because we're not the same, and we have to complement each other. And we know that as we move along and walk with each other, right, there is a collective purpose or a collective vision that is greater than what we can do individually, right? So that's kind of the way that I want you guys to think about it. So, hey, brother, hello. I think it's Lamobri. Thank you guys for popping in. We've kind of been in the conversation for a little while, but I'll restate some of the questions in the quote that I had at the top, and then I'm going to get into my Sunday relationship scenario tonight and see what you guys' thoughts are on it. So the quote that I presented at the beginning of the podcast is, can you have two things or two people that are equally necessary but not equally valuable? Can you have two things that are equally necessary but not equally valuable, meaning like they do not have the same value, right? So that's the quote. And the question that I asked was that, just imagine that someone is allowing you to build your most ideal relationship, and they present to you this question. In this relationship, you can create either an environment of an equal partnership or an interdependent system of fairness. Which one would you choose? So that was the quote, and that is the question. So feel free, as you ponder on it, to let me know what your thoughts are. And when it comes in, of course, I will always read it for you guys. But I'm going to get into tonight's scenario, and hopefully I can get your thoughts on this scenario. So, all right. So the scenario is, there's a married couple. They're newly married. They're about, let's give them 4 years married. And they just had a baby. Let's just say the baby is 7 months. All right. They had a 7-month-old baby. They both are professionals. However, once they had the baby, the wife decided to stay at home. She decided to stay at home with the child just to, be there as the child developed and stay home for a while. And then eventually she's going to go back to work. And so because they've done that, the husband, of course, is, working working a lot of hours to provide for the family, because now, right, instead of the 2 income, they have the 1 income. So that's the backdrop of the story. Now, the wife is feeling a little bit overwhelmed, as any mother would tell you of a newborn and things like that. She's feeling a little overwhelmed because she is taking up more of that responsibility. And so she plans basically to kind of have a little getaway, have a little spa day, and take some basically her time. And the husband completely agrees. And so where they decide to go, they have some family members that are relatives that are near where she's going to have her me time and her spa time. So the husband goes to the family's house with their newborn, well, not newborn, but 7-month-year-old, and not year, 7-month-old. And when they go there, of course, the family's excited to see them and things like that. And so before the wife leaves, she sees that some of her family members are basically taking, the baby, of course, of their excitement. And she, feels like she needs to say to them as well as to her husband that, no, make sure that he's watching the baby and not you guys, because that's what we set up. We set up that I'm going to go to spa and that he's going to watch the babies because I also want him to, take care of the baby like I do because we're both in this together and he doesn't get a lot of time. And so I would like for you guys to not, impede on this and take care of the baby for him because then that wouldn't, I guess, give him an idea of what it is to be, there with the baby, taking care of him. And so the husband kind of gets a little perturbed, a little upset, a little frustrated at her and saying, isn't this just so that you can have your self-care and yourself, take care of yourself and have your time away? Why does it matter whether they watch the baby or I do? Now I feel like you're trying to micromanage this situation and you're trying to control it. And when it's not necessary, as long as the result is that you're getting your self-care, then it doesn't necessarily matter how the baby is being taken care of course, as long as the baby's safe, but this is our family. And she feels like, no, I think we need to stay on par and how we said we were going to do this. And I think it also will give you a better understanding of what I experience and how I am, at home with the baby. And I think that's you letting them take care of the baby was not the plan. And that would be shirking your responsibility. So that is the scenario, folks, right? That's the scenario. So the point of view is the wife would like, I guess, as a plea for him to understand what's going on with her now and how she's feeling kind of overwhelmed. And she would also like him to just kind of follow through with what they said they were going to do, with him giving her a break, her being able to have her own me time, and him taking care of the baby. And feels like if he now hands the baby over to their relatives, that he's shirking responsibility, and it is also not going to give him the opportunity to kind of step in her shoes and see how, I guess, she feels. And he feels like she's trying to now micromanage the situation and control it, and it's not necessary because as long as she gets her me time, it doesn't matter whether the relatives take care of the child or he does, as long as the main goal was so that she can get her breather, and it should not be a problem. So that's the scenario, folks. What are your thoughts? Who do you agree with? Do you agree with the wife, as far as her feeling like, okay, this is what we planned, this is what we should follow through with? And I also think it would help you to understand kind of like how stepping in, I don't think he can step in her shoes because he's not the mother, but I guess to have some kind of relatability of how she feels being, with the baby and taking care of the baby. Or do you agree with the husband that she is being a bit controlling and kind of micromanaging the situation, and that she should just kind of focus on her being able to get the breather that she needs, and as long as that goal is met, that's all that should matter. It shouldn't matter, and that he's not in no way shirking his responsibility with taking care of, if the relatives want to take the child and take the child with them, you know, if they want, or maybe not even take the child with them somewhere, but watch the child while she is having her break. So let me know, what are your thoughts, guys, on this? What are your thoughts on that scenario? And hopefully you can see how it's trying to tie it in what we were talking about earlier on about equal partnerships in relationships versus a relationship that has an interdependent system of fairness, you know, and I'm trying not to expound on it because I want to hear what your thoughts are first before I go there. So I'm going to wait a little bit because I got some new people. Hey, Pej, how are you and your beautiful family? And beautiful Molly, oh my goodness, how are you and your beautiful family? Thank you guys for popping in. I've been on for a little while now, so you guys kind of missed the quote that I rolled out in the beginning, as well as the question that kind of tied in with the situation. We have been kind of talking about the concept of equal partnership in relationship and what that is, and I don't know if any of you guys listen to other relationship experts or, you know, even listen to other people other than me in that space, but there right now is a talk of a kind of divide where they either present traditional relationships, traditional marriages, or equal partnership, and then you'll have certain people on one side that says, you know, the traditional type of structure, the man kind of goes out, he's the breadwinner, he provides, the wife is kind of like a traditional woman, she stays at home with the baby, etc. Whereas others are like equal partnerships is basically each person holds their own weight. I guess maybe it could be something like what Gabrielle Union, that whole interview that she did, where she said her and, you know, her husband Dwayne Wade splits everything down the middle, kind of like an equal partnership in that way. And so in this episode, I said I don't really agree. Well, I don't say I don't agree. What's the word I'm using? I wanted to present something else that I find have been working for my clients when we have our coaching sessions. And what I really do feel in my heart when I look at other areas of life too, that provide a better way to kind of look at the structure of a relationship and provide a better environment where each person can kind of, you know, shine in their skill sets and their talents and what they have to offer and how they come to serve in the relationship. And so I just gave the example of it being an interdependent system of fairness because there are seasons, and I'm sure Molly on here, I don't know if she's still on here, but she has a beautiful family. And really, if you talk to anybody who's been in a relationship for a very long time, they will tell you there are times that it does not feel, you know, that it is where we're constantly both giving the equal amount on each end. And some of it is not because the two people aren't showing up trying to give their all 100%. I think at every step of the way, you want to give to your fullest capacity. However, depending on what is going on in the relationship, that's the reason why we need to be together, is because my husband is skilled at certain things that I'm not skilled at. Right? That's why we complement each other. And I'm skilled at certain things that he might not be skilled at. So depending on what's going on in the relationship, it might require more from me or it might require more from him. But if we are just kind of on where everything got to be a match, it's got to be equal, it could be a setup for disaster, right? Because it will be, right, as they say, the thief of all joy is comparison. When you compare, right, is comparison. So you might be looking at your partner like, why aren't they doing, right, what I'm doing, or why aren't they doing this in this way? And that's not really why we were brought together. We were brought together to complement each other. So there are certain things that he's going to do that I'm not going to do, you know, or that I can't do, and vice versa. So I gave multiple examples, but one of the best examples that I always love to give is that you can just look in your own body, your own body is an interdependent system, right? The heart is beating all the time. It's like I have family members that work in the medical field, and some of them are nurses, and it's like, oh, and I have a best friend who's a doctor, and it's like, they're working all the time, man. They're working all the time. And I remember when my aunt who's a nurse was like, being a nurse, it's like you feel like you don't get a break. You're working all the time, and the heart is like that, right? It's working all the time. It does not stop. Prayerfully, it won't, until we've done all that we can here. But imagine if the heart was like looking at the kidney, looking at the, your tonsils, looking at like, oh, you're not holding up your weight. What you doing? You know what I mean? It would never do that because it is designed to do what it's supposed to do. It's purpose to do what it's supposed to do. So I think when we come into relationships, hopefully we've been able to kind of delight in discovering who we are so we can kind of know how we can show up for someone, right? Or how we best serve. So once we know that, it's kind of like, okay, well, God made me this way to do this. This kind of comes natural to me, or even if it doesn't come natural to me, I still know that I have certain characteristics or certain parts of my personality that will allow, right, me to have the endurance to be able to maybe navigate a certain challenge that comes up. So I think if we think of it in that way, that it won't always be equal. It just won't. However, it should be an environment where it is still constant fairness. And we kind of talked about that earlier, about the difference between something being equal and something being fair. And I've always said, and I'm working on my third book where I highlighted a lot. I put it, alluded to it a little bit in my book, 7 Stages of Love and Relationships. But on this third book, this is where I'm really diving in on it. And I always say that, God makes everything just right? Everything that he makes, he puts in position, and he puts it in a position because he knows how he created it to serve. And so once you're put in that position, you serve from that position. And I mean, everything else here, kind of does that, right? Though the moon, the stars, and all those things, they don't, at least from what we know, have the same opportunity of choice like we do, right? Because he also created us just right, and he also put certain skill sets and purpose within us that makes us serve in a certain way and within a certain capacity. And once you kind of understand that, when you go into a relationship, then it's less you comparing yourself to what your partner does, because you really understand what your position is. And you play that position to the fullest capacity, no matter what it is, in the collective, no matter what it, just like the heart is the one that's beating constantly, and maybe it feels like it's doing more work than the rest of them. But the rest, right, the kidneys, the other organs that we have, they're doing their job too, to their fullest capacity, right, for the whole collective effort of sustaining a life, right? So when we're in our relationships together, we're going to do 100% of what we're skilled at and what we're purposed to do for the collective vision of sustaining, right, this greatness or this greater picture and journey of life that unfolds when two people come together. So I believe, Emily says, Emily's answering the question. She says, I think that unless the husband has a good reason not to look after the baby, I agree with the wife. Okay, so Emily agrees with the wife. She feels like that husband should watch that baby. She feels like that husband should watch that baby unless he has a good reason not to. It shouldn't be that the family, the relative, should take that baby. So she agrees with the wife, that the wife has a good point, that this is the plan that we followed through, that you are the one that's supposed to take care of the baby. So I got one answer. Okay. I'm going to wait and see if I get any more answers from you guys. I'll see if I get some more answers. And welcome, Nova Lady and OD Brando. I don't know exactly when you guys stepped in, but tonight's my relationship scenario. So I put out a scenario. Hopefully you heard some of it. I would love to get your feedback. And outside of the scenario, definitely feel free to let me know what your thoughts are. And I love, absolutely, you do not have to agree with me. I think that's one of the greatest things that can happen is when somebody doesn't agree, because then it affords for us to have a more in-depth conversation and gives opportunity for me to learn more as well as the other person. So please feel free as far as like what your thoughts are. And maybe there's someone in here that's like, well, no, I think equal partnership is the way. Like, that's the way it should be. That person matches everything that I do, and that's it, you know. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that, and I'll wait and see if you guys have any other feedback on who you guys agree with. All right. I'm trying to think of way I can kind of simplify this for maybe the ones that came in later that didn't hear it. So the scenario that I put out is a married couple, young married couple, only married for 4 years. They have a 7-month baby, right? And they were both professionals, but the wife decided to stop working so that she can be at home with the baby. So right now, in this season, she's a stay-at-home mom, but she is feeling somewhat overwhelmed, and she plans to take just a breather, right? A kind of not a long one. Like they're gonna drive up to their relative's home and she's gonna have like a spa day and things like that. The husband completely agrees, right? He's been working a lot because he's making up for the income that they have, right? No longer have right now because the wife is not working. So they plan this day for her to get some time. Where they're going, they do have some relatives there. And when they go to relatives, as anybody knows, when you have a new baby, you come by the relatives swarm that baby basically and kind of take the baby. And so before the wife leaves, she sees that they are basically taking care of the baby, and she says to them as well as the husband that, you know, the plan was that I was going to go to spa day and, you know, my husband's going to watch the baby. And she tells him, no, you have to watch the baby, not them, because one, that was a plan that we had, and as well as I want you to be able to watch the baby so you can kind of, you know, at least have some kind of relatability of what I've been going through or what I've been feeling. He feels like you are trying to be controlling, you are trying to micromanage the situation, and that it's not a problem if the relatives want, you know, if we're here and they want to tend to the child, tend to our baby. He's in great, you know, great. He's safe, basically. He's safe with family. And he feels like as long as the goal is met, that you get your break, then everything, all is well, right? So that's the two sides, right? Husband feels like you're micromanaging, you're being controlling. It's fine as long as you get your time that you need. She feels like, no, this is the plan. This is the follow through. This is what we planned. So this is what should happen. And you should not shirk your responsibility. She feels like if he does not, then he's kind of shirking his responsibility on his end. So hopefully I did that really quickly for the people who came in. So that's what we are talking about tonight. And I'll give a moment to see if I get any feedback from you guys. So let's see, because I know it takes a little while to type. So far, I got one answer from Emily who thinks, listen, unless you got a good reason, you better take care of that baby. He better take care of that baby. Unless he has some good reason for not looking after him. She agrees with the wife. So we'll see. And this is pretty much a a situation that I'm sure if I have any mothers on here, where a lot of women, right, when you have a new baby, especially your first baby, that you can definitely feel overwhelmed at it. So I've definitely talked to many mothers who have felt that way. So, yeah, so this definitely could be a realistic, real life scenario for sure. So I'll get one more minute, see if I get a response, and then I will give you guys my feedback on it. And then leave room for any other Q&A you guys have before I end the live. Make sure I didn't miss any comments. Okay. I don't think I missed anything. All right. So I am going to chime in. Of course, if you are typing, when it comes in, I will definitely read your statement and read what your feedback and your thoughts are on this situation. So, on this situation, I agree with the husband. I agree with the husband. And the reason why I agree with the husband is because I do believe that the main goal is for her to get self-care and time, and I think just within the context of this scenario and this situation, anyone knows if there's a couple and you have family and you go and you bring that baby to the family, they most definitely are going to, and especially, let's first say this, if you have the support system where you have a family who you can even go to, right? To be able to have a moment or a breather, that's a blessing in itself. They did not lie when the quote, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, because the more support system you have, right, that are healthy and supportive and positive, the better. And so in this situation, if it just so happens to be that the location that she's going to is near family and they go to family, and it's not like he was planning for that to happen, that, he was trying, I would say he was trying to shirk his responsibility if he just mapped that out, and maybe behind his head, he kind of knew, maybe, possibly, but even in that, it's, like I said, it's, if you have a community that is there to help, you with being able, whether it's childcare, being able to watch the child, I think that's great and that's a blessing. So I think one, that's not being thought of on the wife's end, because that's the first thing I would definitely think of, is having gratitude that I do have family outside of just us and our immediate family, that if we were, right, to do what I'm doing right now, or even if my husband and I wanted to go out, we could have a support system and willing family members that would step in. So that's first things first, is thinking about the gratitude and gratefulness of having that. And then two, I do think it's like, I can understand the desire and the need to want the husband to kind of relate or feel what she's going through, but in the way that she presented it and in the timing that she presented it, because that need is kind of being fueled, or at least I guess that need is presenting itself in a kind of micromanaging way or control. I don't think that part is good, because the two things that should be the main focus is, one, yes, the her need for a breather, a moment, and her self-care. And so no matter how that comes about, as long as that is what's being met right now, if her husband had completely ignored her wishes, to have a breather and to say, listen, I am feeling overwhelmed and I need a moment. If he did not, right, agree with her or go along with her to plan for her to get that time, then that would be an issue, because you want to provide that for one another. But he didn't do that. He was absolutely with her, right? He said, yeah, definitely. Well, whatever we have to do, right, we'll do it. But I don't think that he's shirking the responsibility. And I don't think whatever amount of, right, because this was going to be only really like a day. It wasn't like going to be a week or a month or that she's staying away. I don't think whatever hours that he was going to stay with that child is going to afford for him to truly understand or step in her shoes of really in depthly or in totality of what she's experiencing. I think what's better is, okay, have moments, whether it's a bi-weekly check-in or weekly check-in or a monthly check-in, whatever it is, where she can communicate to him what she's feeling, how, what's going on, and maybe what can we implement, whether it's weekly or daily or structure to hopefully help her to not feel overwhelmed. That's more of, right, where we can kind of bring a resolution to what she's going through. But just trying to micromanage or control in that moment who takes care of the child and it's specifying that it needs to be him and not the relatives is not going to necessarily give her what she's really truly desiring, right? So it seems like there's two desires that she has that are primary, which is one, she needs a breather, and two, she seems like she wants him to feel what she's going through being a stay-at-home mom. But it's not like he's shirking his responsibility. He's just not necessarily there like her because he now has to pick up the weight of them not having, right, the dual income, right? So in certain, as going back to what we we're talking about in the beginning of the podcast, is that relationships go through seasons, and these are natural seasons that occur with just like things that naturally occur when you're building a family or raising a family, right? So you might have a season, if you do choose to do something like that, where it's like, okay, I want to stay home with my child. Okay, well, now we don't have two incomes anymore. Now we have to make up for that. So it's important in that moment for her to kind of have understanding, both of them, her to have understanding that he's not being there because he doesn't want to be. He's not being there because he has to, right now, work up and make up for the loss of income. And two, that if she wants to communicate what she's really feeling, that's what she's going to have to do, not just in the moment of them being at their relative's house and saying, well, no, because I don't even believe it would satisfy her fully, just him taking care of the child for whatever hours that he would need, because the real issue is, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and how do we handle this? How do we resolve this? Okay, maybe we can resolve this to see what's going on in the daily schedule. What's going on. I know I've talked to new mothers, and we've had to flip the dynamic of them feeling like their child is ruling them instead of them being the parent and being able to structure a system around the child. And don't get me wrong, listen, I have children. I have 3. So I'm not saying this from a very removed or displaced type of positioning. So I know the schedule of a newborn is like, oh my gosh, right? Clockwork, especially if you're a mother who's breastfeeding and things like that. However, children are like us, and we are people of routine and people of habit. So the more you structure something and the more you do something, the easier it becomes, the more used to the routine, whether you're a baby all the way up until adulthood, that you get used to that. And I've found that in the way that I've been able to raise and develop my own children, even from baby states. Thank God for my mother-in-law. God bless her soul. There were so many things that she taught me to do kind of ahead of time, and not to put limitations on my children and what I feel like they are capable or ready to do, from potty training, from sitting the child up. I think if you have, right, someone who can kind of open your mind to the fact that you are the parent that's presenting all these opportunities of growth to your child, and not cap that growth and say, oh, they're just not ready for it, or I won't be able to put this newborn and this child on a routine, then you have a good amount to kind of work with and not feel stuck. And I found that most of the mothers that I've talked to that have burnout are because that child was most definitely running things from the moment that they came out, and they just didn't feel capable to put that child on a routine. But then I've talked to other mothers who their child is like, in their nursery, sleeping, a certain way. And don't get me wrong, each child is different. And I know there are children that, right, might have jaundice and other things, right? This is warranting there aren't, right, different medical conditions and things like that are going on. But oftentimes, if that's not the case, it's just kind of repositioning or reappropriating, really, the relationship that you're the parent, and that you can set up healthy routines for the child that the child can become very used to, and that would afford you to be able to get moments and breaks. And even if that's not the case, I've also talked to a lot of women where when the child is sleeping, they're like, okay, I got to do all of these other things. I have to clean, I have to do, try to get everything done within the time before the child gets up. And then, of course, what happens, then there's no time for rest for the mother, which is definitely going to equal burnout. So there's usually always some space there that you can work with, and that you can examine what you can do differently to give yourself some time. And so that's that part. And then, of course, for them to come together, if it is something that is medical and it's, let's say, maybe unavoidable, then there's, right, something else that can be brought in that can happen more on the daily, that would provide consistent relief for her, not that momentary, no, you watch a child for this day and that's going to make me feel better. No, we have now not focused on the main goal, which was your rest and your moment of peace and rejuvenation to yourself, to now we're trying to dictate, how this process is going to map out. And that has nothing to do, right, with you getting the peace that you need. It's not going to provide you extra peace in that way. So I would say for this situation, the better resolve is that, okay, there's clearly some comparison going on, an unhealthy comparison, and we need to kind of talk about it because as long as she's getting the rest that she needs, and the gratitude is coming in that she does have both a husband as well as relatives that will happily, right, watch, the child so that she gets a break, then that's the primary, right? That's the primary goal. That is the primary thing that we want to achieve. And the rest of it is more from a selfish angle. So I definitely go with the husband on this one, and not the wife for those reasons. So, Sham God, hey, how are you? Thank you for popping in. I'm getting off now. I've been on for a while. I come on every Thursday and Sunday at 8 p.m. But we did have a relationships scenario tonight that I just finished, and we were talking about the differences between having an equal partnership and relationship, having a traditional relationship, and what I like to present to my clients is what it means to have an interdependent system of fairness in a relationship, that something being equal and something being fair is different. Even though we sometimes use those things interchangeably, it is different, right? When we're thinking about equal, at the bare bones definition of something being equal, it means that those two things are the same. And in a relationship, it's most definitely made up of two people who complement each other, right? What they both have to offer each other. They might not have the same strengths, and you want the difference between the masculine and the feminine energy to kind of join each other so that we can learn from each other, so that we can grow and kind of understand God as much as we can. I can't say we can understand God in totality because I don't think that'll happen in this lifetime, but at least we can strive to through understanding each other and how he made each for each other, and how to work with one another, even within the differences, and highlight, and celebrate those differences and grow interdependently with each other. So that's what we were talking about tonight. So thank you for all of you guys who popped in. There were so many people who came in. Emily, who kind of stayed with me for pretty much the whole time. Diamond, Pej, Molly, Nova Lady, Odie, Brando, Sham God at the end. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Anyone who's watching on the many different platforms that I go live on, feel free, if you're on YouTube, to live, comment, and subscribe. You'll know whenever I come on. And you will be able to catch the latest and the complete episodes. I only put the full episodes on YouTube. So definitely subscribe to that if you want to dive in deeper with me, if you want to inquire about one-on-one coaching, or become a member of my Forever Friends Academy and join with a membership. Feel free to click the link on my on my description, in my description on YouTube, as well as Facebook, and on IG, click the link on the bio. So it was great talking to you guys. I will be back Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until next time, as always remember to live to love freely. And I will talk to you guys soon. All right? Bye.